to ask my grandkids to do it.
At least this group is a little bit more manageable than the hundreds in the other room, so I can look at you directly and I can almost throw something if I need to get your attention. We want to stay on time today, so I'm Anna Chartrand. I'm with the Southeast Regional Resource Center, representing the Regional Resource Center program, and I have the honor of facilitating this session that you've already met Rachel and Alan. I don't think I need to go through introductions again. Most of you know them very personally, and rather than take that time, I'd rather go ahead and get started with what the content of this is, and that's hopefully to let you have some time to question and have input. One thing, when we designed this whole Common Core Summit for students with disabilities, part of the idea was to get better informed with each other, to have you be able to have some input. Oh, I thought you were pointing to me.
No,
sit
there's
down.
three slots up here.
And although some questions were formulated at the beginning, what we would like for you to do is I'm going to put the questions up there. These are the presenters, and I'm going to put them up there. Let you look at them. If there are a few of them that are of special interest to you, please write down the number. But what we're going to do is first read the last question. We came up with some questions that hopefully the Rachel and Alan could respond to and talk about, and then if you have questions, more importantly, some of them they may not have answers to yet. They're still formulating a lot of things, and so they can get your input. And that's part of the purpose of this forum, is to get your input. So hopefully, even if there's a question that hasn't been addressed and they aren't addressing it fully because they haven't had to develop it yet, you may want to have your input with it. So one of the things was the last one, I think, was more of a goal rather than a question. It is a question, but let's look at it. How will results of your consortium's assessment provide credible evidence to an LEA, employer, or post-high school academic institution that a specific student with or without a disability is college and career ready? So that to me is a goal, that these assessments on all levels, all four, come out where every child, all children have accessibility to show what they know. We're talking about the two alternate assessment consortium only. Yeah. The other session, if you're more interested in general, yeah. No, we're talking just about MEXIC and DLM. And you heard the overview this morning, so I'm assuming that everybody kind of has the background of that. So if you'll take a quick look, if there's any up here that are of special interest to you, jot those numbers down. But it made sense that since the people who have to address some of them linked together, and so they are going to take it in the order which made sense to them to talk about each of their consortium and let you know what's going on, and then you'll have time to ask questions, give input, and take it a little further. So we're going to flip a coin. Rachel,
I was going to talk about how we kind of reformulated the questions. If we can go down one. Those are ambitious questions, and we have an hour, and we really want to have some discussion. So my colleague Jackie Kearns worked with Alan last week while I was tied up, and they had come upon some really big ideas that we had hoped to share, and they're more reflected in these 5 bullets, but 2 of the bullets, really the first 2, we don't think we have to cover at length here. It was just that it was important for us to start from the assumption that you better be grappling with what you truly believe about how to prepare all students well for college and career prior to developing your assessment and informing your work on curriculum and instruction and professional development. We had that wonderful opportunity to hear Conley this morning speak to some of his issues, and we had a couple of slides that we thought, well, just in case they hadn't talked about that yet, we want to emphasize that starting from the very beginning, thinking about all kids and thinking about what at first looks like a no-brainer. We've got the Common Core state standards, well, they got to get into college, they got to succeed there. It's actually a very complex, value-ridden kind of discussion. So that in our two consortia talk and work together quite a bit around college and career readiness and some of the other components of what we're doing. So we wanted to emphasize that. I don't think we need to spend a lot of time here talking about it. When we get to the end and you want to come back to that, we will. The second one is that we also wanted to show that both of our projects were built on a kind of a comprehensive way of thinking about the whole system. That developing an innovative assessment, if we haven't helped build capacity in the system, to take these new challenging standards, to take that difficult construct of college and career readiness for all the kids, without thinking about how all the pieces get together. We'll never get to the point where at the end we've got kids who are well prepared because the whole system worked together. Again, we don't think we have to spend time on it here, but we sure could. We'd love to.
I did put a handout in somewhere in the back. I don't know where it is, but there is a DLM theory of action. If somebody has not seen it, I pass it out everywhere.
So the bottom three are what we are prepared to just walk you through, because it's three things that both projects are working on right now. The idea being that we can start the discussion about what's happening in those areas. They come right out of the questions we were given. And then from there, we'll turn it to you and say, what other questions should we talk about today? Is that all right? We kind of narrowed it down that way? Okay.
We have some slides.
And then let's, yeah,
Or do you
we're
wanna
going to
talk?
scan through the first slides that we're not going to talk about. So, yeah, just keep going, because I think we did get that covered this morning. And we'll start here on a focus that many of you have also seen about who are the students in the 1%. And this, we're sharing common data nationally on the learner characteristics inventory across states. And both projects are using the learner characteristics inventory to see where the kids are.
We are developing our own characteristic inventory, whatever we intend to call it in the end. We're in the beginning stages of those in our consortium, and I'll keep you abreast of that.
Yeah,
But
that's
we're
good.
just-
And I think at the end of the time, with the, we've surveyed now as baseline 44,000 students. Their teachers gave us information on 44,000 students. It's about half of the students that participate in alternate assessment in our collective states, because we felt that was essential to understand as we develop our evidence-centered design approach to assessment. We have to know quite a bit about who the kids are in the assessment. But we also went into the project understanding that communication, the ability to take in information and give it back out, is a prerequisite to any academic learning, to any learning, and certainly to measuring learning. So the data from this study, which is 9 states, has been pretty consistent around the country. And I want to highlight it here because everything else we talk about, if the children don't have a way to take information in and bring it back out, everything else we're talking about today is of no use. Okay? And I'm just highlighting the data from that national study, and we have got baseline data in 18 of our 19 partners now that is consistent. Most students in the population, this won't surprise all of you who have done this in your state, use symbolic communication. They're also doing basic math and reading. Of the 30% that remain, 15% are in fact communicating. They're using expressive language in some way. They're taking things in, they're putting it out, but it may be through cries, facial expression. But once you've seen that, you can build good communication for kids. So now we're up to 85%, right? The remaining 15%, should have said 15% are using expressive language. I saw you looking at me kind of alarmed. And then the remaining are communicating, but we haven't gotten them channeled in a way that's systematic and that they can use. Only 2% of the students in these states don't appear to have receptive language at this point in time. Very, very small. What's really frightening is that symbolic language use does not increase over time. This isn't the same kids moving through. It is at a point in time from 3rd grade to 10th grade or 12th grade. Okay, so we hope that's going to change. And that for the students who don't use oral speech currently, majority also don't have any assistive technology to provide them. So put that into the frame. College and career readiness is very difficult if you haven't got a tool to communicate. The really good news is that almost all the kids that participate in alternate assessment are on their way to be effective communicators. For those who aren't, we have a lot of work to do, and it is a very high priority. So I think both projects are really emphasizing communication. I don't know if you want to follow up on that.
I would just say what I said this morning in that that's okay. What I said this morning was that we are making every effort in our consortium and both of us to utilize AAC devices and technologies that the students are currently using. The worst thing you can do is try to give somebody something at assessment time or during the year, something new, and that is definitely not the intention of what we're doing. We've all grown through those issues. So we're making sure that if students use certain technologies, that they are compatible with whatever we're doing in our technologies. We're going to be surveying our states by fall to find out what are the most frequently used AAC devices and things like that. So we have like point and click versus having to enter information about those things. So, Mary?
Asking questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
So your last bullet about the majority do not use oral speech, do not use AAC. What percentage of the 70%, I'm assuming it's not all of the 70%, but what percentage of the students did not use oral speech? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Did you hear the question?
Figure out the total percentage that don't use AAC.
She's wondering what percentage, and I see Gay with her hand up, and I know that the University of New Hampshire and New Hampshire have been doing a lot of work too. I don't dare answer. I wish my colleague Jackie Kearns were here, but Gay, do you?
We've got separate data. I mean, along with the LCI, we've got a sensory access and what we're doing for level 5. Our data show that we've got this very similar pattern of data, 70% knowledge indication. But what we're finding though, when we look at expressive patterns, that 70%, they're not, teachers treat those kids as if they had full access to language. They teach them as if they could teach them in auditory lecture form sometimes. But when you look at their expressive patterns are very interesting. They're using a lot of pointing, they're using a lot of pictures, they're using a lot of nonverbal communication. Because even if they're using language, they may not be able to perform, they may not be as strong as processing happening from an information content perspective. And some of those kids, even when they're using language, tremendously benefit from using AAC. So it's a complicated question to answer, but we've got over half the kids in the 70% probably using AAC.
Need or use? Need, but do not use. I'm just interested in, how did it come up about how many kids do not have access to AAC? I was just wondering.
And just think of the potential now with the, as commonly used technology increases and gets cheaper. Everything from iPads to fancy pens and things. That's something I'm hoping in the 4 years that we're all working on this, we can turn around. New Hampshire data, I'd encourage you to go to the Beyond Access website, the University of New Hampshire, because I think your data are finer grained.
Just a little bit different, but very much in line with the numbers you're talking about.
We can come back and talk to that, because that's really foundational. So, yeah, email Jackie. She couldn't come today. So we're going to tag team a little bit on how we're developing our participation policies. At Next Tech has a committee. We reviewed at least a review of the participation policies in our states, and what the state members have told us is that actually they think that most states have commonalities and a commitment to what is around 1%. Our participation data with a couple of unusual situations show that. The key difference for us is that we raise the question about what happens to the 2% students. And in our groups, in our states, they said we will develop a high-quality test for the students who are participating in alternate assessment and alternate achievement standards now. We have to work with Park and Smarter Balance to make sure that all kids are assessed well. So at this time, I guess we've made a commitment to building a high-quality test for the students that we were funded to assess, and that is kids that it looks like in our states are pretty well defined as a 1%. We will use our learner characteristics data to inform those criteria, but more importantly, it'll help us as we go through a principal design process in developing the templates for the items that define universal design characteristics, kind of accommodations that could be used, multiple modes of accessing and showing the way that kids do it, but participation criteria are part of that. What we don't know, we have more work to do, is we see some variation across states around exclusion options. We want that to be very, very small, but states have to have a dialogue so that we all come to the same ones. We have to grapple with what about those students who may still not be able, we haven't found the combination to allow them to express. How do we handle that in the assessment system? We have a good handle on how to handle it in our curriculum instruction and professional development materials. But when we come to the day of the test, how do we handle that very, very, very tiny percentage of kids? Do we separate reading and math decisions for participation? Right now, very few states, if any, do, but there is talk in Congress about requiring that. Everybody is talking about something in Congress, so you don't want to put that in the bank right now. But the point is, we have to be talking about that. And we realize that participation policies interact both with graduation stakes in some states, and as we think about college and career readiness, we have to make sure we've got that in the radar, and certainly for teacher evaluation in states. So we've got a bunch of things that would be interested to hear what you're talking about, and then pass it on.
So in DLM, we're doing very similar things in that we collected participation guidelines from all our states, the 13 states that participate, and they're all waiting back to hear from us as to what we're doing. But some of the issues that surface are, this is bigger than the 13 states. This is at least, well, this affects all 4 consortia, in that even in our consortia, for example, we have 2 states that are members of PARC, and 11 states that are members of Smarter Balance. For example, when the assessment is given, which policies do we agree to? Which accommodation guidelines do we agree to? And do we have special dispensation for the 2 states? And then how does it affect our data and what we're trying to report as a consortium? Anybody have an answer?
Actually, you do, Ellen.
Yeah, no, I'm just a little tongue-in-cheek here, but yeah, go ahead.
I'm less concerned, honestly, with
I'm not,
the accommodation policies.
I'm not really concerned about accommodations in that we're trying to build what we have with a lot of universal design built into it, so that there actually should be not that much need for accommodations. Our feeling, anyway.
I'm more concerned about the definition of the content, and the content is defined to be the same across all 4. I'm very concerned about that. Rachel, you mentioned earlier this morning you were losing sleep about I think you said something about the coordination among the 4 consortia and the anchors. I mean, we've got 4 different interpretations of the Common Core standards, which is of deeper concern to me than anything. I mean, because I don't think we can have a common definition of content, frankly, up at the Common Core. I'm worried about that.
Yeah,
Especially when it comes to boundaries of acceptable representation.
unless everybody gets in the same room, that we have all agreed to something. And I don't know. And that would take a long time. I'm not sure where we're gonna be on that.
I guess I believe that,
I don't think so.
Be in the middle so I can slap hands.
Well, I sort of discussed this, but just as we looked at the data, we are in our consortium creating our own survey, and our schedules are for field testing this spring and for full implementation next fall for the 13 states. We will do some talking and hopefully have data that will be somewhat comparable. May not be every question that's comparable because we have some issues that we want. We're trying to make it so that it's user-friendly and running it through our colleagues at University of Kansas and our TAC, etc. So, but I just want to, it's just that we have some unique needs that we got into discussions about, and we couldn't change things on the other surveys. So.
I turned to this in response to Gay's comment because we had a few things that we had put up as being essential to have conversations across the 4 consortia. Accommodations policies in Park and Smarter Balance actually may have more an effect on who can be measured well there and a counter pressure on us. Really, I think both consortia are developing this through a process that is going to look very broadly at the content we're trying to measure in multiple